That's you?
That's me.
Oh, wow. Oh. Moran Heroes. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Take a picture of this too later on.
Yeah.
Yeah, the biggest celebration of the 4th of July is in Salt Lake City. It's monstrous. They had a parade. I've got pictures of it here. The morning of the 4th of July, 350,000 people on the street watching us riding down the street. Very touching moment.
That's great. Well,
You know, I just got back from Germany about 3 months ago. I was in the German newspaper.
huh?
I don't know if you read German or not.
Yeah, I can't read it. You're pretty famous, no?
Mike, there's a picture of me in Germany about 12 weeks ago.
Awesome. This is great.
That was taken at Buchenwald at the concentration camp there.
All right.
And that lady in the middle of that picture wanted to see me because there were 4 veterans there, me and 3 other veterans. I was the only one that was there at Buchenwald when we were
Right.
liberated. That was 79 years ago. She and I were there close together. We didn't know each other, but we were both there 79 years ago. All right, what do you want me to do for it?
Well, so I just have my notes right here, kind of like my questions just to guide me through. So we're kind of gonna start before the war and then just keep going until today.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about your life in Superior and just what you did every day, family life, stuff like that?
Yeah. I was one brother, no children, no sisters, just the 2 of us. Cold as hell up there. Below zero. It could peak your feet below zero for a month straight in the wintertime. 10, 20, 30 below zero. Went from grade school through high school with the same kids like you do in a small town. And then the summers were wonderful. Everybody owns a lake up there. There's so many lakes, you can own your own lake. And so we go out to the lake, we had a cabin, everybody had a cabin. Whether you're poor or not, or rich, we had a cabin on a lake. And we lived my brother and I would live at the lake with my mother for 90 days, from June 1st to September 1st. And swimming all day long, fishing.
Oh, yeah.
In the fall, we start hunting partridge, grouse, ducks, deer, deer hunting, rabbit hunting. We were busy outdoors all the time. Skating, hockey, tobogganing. It was wonderful. It was a perfect place to grow up. And so I can't say any more than that except it was a wonderful, we were not wealthy at all. We were very, back in those days, everybody was poor. My dad managed to scrape up enough money to take care of the food in the house. And when I got out of high school when I was 16, and when I was 17 I enlisted, and as soon as I was 18 I was gone.
Wow. So what kind of motivated you to just join the army? When you were about 17?
The government had 2 programs, ASTP and V5. V5 was Navy, ASTP was Army Specialized Training Program. And if you signed up, they would send you to one of these engineering schools. So I signed up because I wanted to do that. So they sent me to the University of Wisconsin. As soon as I turned 18, they sent me down to Madison to the University of Wisconsin. And I started going to school there. I thought, this is great. I'll spend a year or so here studying engineering before I go into the war itself. But did you see the movie Patton?
Never
Oh,
heard
you
of it.
got the
Patton?
Patton, General Patton, General George Patton.
No, I've never seen it.
Oh, you got to. He was the general of the Third Army. An army is made up of a certain number of divisions, and there was a battle in Italy in 1940, early 1943, battle in Italy at Kasserine Pass. And we took the Germans gave us an awful beating. We lost an awful lot of Americans were killed there. So the army said to Washington, we got to have more men. We were running out of men to fight the war. So they canceled our engineering program and put us all in the infantry. That happened all over the country. All over the country. There were kids who had signed up for ASTP, were in different colleges all over the country. I've met some of them. But the minute the Army canceled that program, we all went into the infantry and started training to fight the ground war.
I see. So, and you did your training in Georgia?
Right.
You did your training in Georgia?
We were all sent to Fort Benning, Georgia to start with. You spend 13 weeks in basic training, and then you go to a division someplace. My division, the 87th, was in my 87th division was over in South Carolina at the time. Okay, that's our division's emblem, 87,
Right.
and called the Golden Acorn. So we trained there all through the first half of 1944, and in the second half of 44 we went to Europe and got into action before the Battle of the Bulge broke on the 16th of December.
Right.
And we were in Europe fighting before the Battle of the Bulge broke. We were in a place called in northern France, and this stuff I was in 4 battles with George. France, in a place called the Sarre Valley.
Okay.
In the eastern, and it was a very, very tough battle. We lost an awful lot of men. I wish I was a little bit better organized, but I will. Listen.
That's a map?
This, yeah, you can have this 347. That's the number of our regiment. Okay, this is where we entered. This is where we entered. Late one afternoon, early evening, we moved into these woods, and we didn't stay there too long. And in my story, which I'll show you, we moved out of this woods on this roadway here. And that night, the Germans shelled the daylights out of that woods. Good thing we got out of there, shelled through it early. Anyway, this dotted line is the French border and the German border. And here's Obergalbach, and here's Hill 360, which is a very, very tough battle. Okay, from here to there, and we get into about the fifth day. 5 days from there to get to here. We had, I think 98 men killed and banned, and probably 212 wounded in action. We had 300 casualties. Just moving from there to there, we had 300 casualties. That's how tough they were.
Yeah.
The Germans had had three weapons better than us. Hitler started preparing for this war in 1934. We didn't start preparing for war until 1939. So he had the 88, which is the greatest piece of field artillery in the world. The Tiger tank, the greatest tank in the world at that time. And the Tiger tank was an 88 model on it, it was deadly. One battle that let me go grab a book. Stay there, Mike, don't move.
Okay.
Mike, okay, yeah, I'll be right around the
Be
corner.
right.
Shortly after D-Day, which was the 6th day of June, 1944. Remember that day?
Yeah.
June 6th.
Well, I wasn't there. Okay.
Yeah, okay. I wasn't in on it, I got in, I was too young, they wouldn't let me go in on that. But the Americans landed and we started moving inland. And about the third day of, here we are, the third day of that advance, a British armored division. Now, an armored division is a lot of tanks and supporting vehicles, troop carriers, other kinds of vehicles. But a division is an awful lot of vehicles. And the Cromwell tank was a big tank. That was England's biggest tank. Anyway, this guy, Michael Whitman, who was the commander in charge of one Tiger tank, he came across that British division. He came across that British division while on the move. And one afternoon, he knocked out 54 British tanks and troop carriers. One Tiger tank knocked out 54 British vehicles. If this division was stopped dead in its tracks, it couldn't move for weeks. It had to be resupplied by England. They had to send over more tanks, more troop carriers. They had to send over, because an awful lot of men were killed in that attack, his attack. It was an amazing thing, but that tells you about the German superiority in equipment.
Yeah.
The German machine gun fired 1,200 rounds a minute. That means every second, 20 bullets were coming out the end of that barrel, just like a beam of light. They were so close together. If you could not get hit by one German machine gun bullet. The second one was so close behind it. If you got hit here, you couldn't fall fast enough to avoid number 2, 3, 4, and 5. I mean, it was just like sticking a knife in you. And
That's crazy.
and our machine gun maybe ours was making 400 rounds a minute, a third as much as theirs. So it was not easy fighting them on the ground. They were, and now this fighting here that went on, this was in the Star Valley, and yeah, that was. Yeah, we lost so many men there. We were in business. We were in action for 3 days, and we hadn't seen a single German yet. We didn't see a single German in the first 3 days, but we already lost 20. Yeah, we already lost 30, 40 men a day. Every single day. Laying in your foxhole, you'd open up your eyes in the morning and wonder, is today the day I'm going to get it? Because you're seeing men. When we entered combat in France, the first day of combat, during the night, we slipped in and relieved the guys out of the foxhole. And they went back. So in the morning, we got the orders to let's get up and we're going to advance towards the Germans. The Germans are in that direction, just let's get up and start moving. We get out of our foxhole and started to move. The first 15 seconds, 7 of my friends were down dead or wounded. In the first 15, and I thought to myself, what the hell am I doing here? This is no place for me. Get me out of here. It was terrible.
That was in the Saar Valley?
Huh?
That was in the Saar Valley?
Yeah, that was in that Saar Valley. Yeah. In the morning, that probably the first morning, right here after getting past those woods. Right somewhere right about here. And it's just a disaster.
So was it your whole regiment? Was it your whole regiment that was just moving up? Or was it?
Yeah, that was the whole regiment. Yeah. Yeah, it was terrible. Yeah, I'll give you one of those if you want it.
Oh, this is you?
That's me. I'm 19 years old.
Yeah.
1945.
Now here's interesting. Leo Tolstoy was a great Russian writer. You may have heard that name. He was writing to a young man who was going into the army in Russia to fight in the battle of Russia. I don't know what part Russia played in the Second World War, but anyway. This boy was in communication with Tolstoy, and this boy, his commander told him that these boys they're going to have to go where men are killed and crippled. His heart contracts with a double fear, the fear of death and the fear of shame. He goes to the place where men are killed and hopes it is only said that men are killed there. But that is not really the case, and things will turn out otherwise. But half an hour in the line, in combat, is ample to show him that reality is more terrible and more unbearable than he expected. It wasn't long before I could articulate for myself the message that the war was sending the infantry soldier. You are expendable. Don't think that your family's good opinion of you will carry any ice here. You are not. You are just another body to be used. Since all can't be damaged or destroyed as they're fed into the machinery, some may survive, but that's not my fault. Most of you will be chewed up and will probably be one of them. This is regrettable, but nothing can be done about it. it's very difficult to explain in words how we felt. They're very difficult. Okay, in combat, you are tired all the time. You are scared all the time. You are cold all the time. And you are hungry all the time. It can't be helped. In your foxhole, you have no blankets, no bedroom, just the clothes on your back. And up in Belgium in the snow, it was down to 5 or 10 above zero. And at night, you get down even lower than that. And nothing you do about it except lay there in your foxhole and shiver. Of those four things, of course, you can't help being cold and you can't help being scared. But the three things that are so vital to your living, that's water, rest, and food. You must have all three of those to survive. Of the three, you can get on without food for a couple of weeks if you have to. But you cannot get on without rest or water. Every single day your body demands rest and your body demands water. In Belgium, we had the snow was that deep, so that was our water. But it's so difficult to get any rest. Your body is screaming for rest. I remember one afternoon, we'd just driven the Germans out of a town. And the lieutenant said, okay, fellas, in 45 minutes we're going to go after them. And go after them and start chasing them again. And he said, down the street about a block, the kitchen came up from behind the line. The kitchen came up and set up some warm food. There's some warm food about a block down the street.
Right.
And so I thought to myself, okay, I can walk down there, get some more food, come back and get ready to go that way and chase the Germans. All I could do, I didn't look for a pistol, I just fell to the floor. I had to give up, I had to give up the food. I couldn't go get the food.
You chose the rest.
My body said, I got this. I just fell on the floor and I lay there for 45 minutes before we started chasing the Germans again. So it's a very I'm trying to say, it's unreal. Being at war is unreal. You can't, no way in the world could you, right now, sitting here, could you visualize what it would be like, what it was like you could. I was standing in a field one afternoon with 51 dead American boys all around me, laying all around me. 51, all chewed up. Bodies torn apart, heads off the bodies, guts strewn out for 15 yards, their testes. Just a tragedy, a real tragedy. You see that many of our boys killed in one action.
Yeah, it's very hard to take. It stays with you.
Just horrible. There's nothing we could do for them. They were all dead.
I can barely even look at like a dead chicken.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, I'll read something here. Until you have slept for days in the mud, until you have spent days and weeks and even months living in constant, unremitting fear for your life. until you have gone hungry or eaten cold meals days on end, until you have felt the combination of adrenaline rush and absolute terror when attacking under fire, not knowing who is firing on you or who is merely watching. Until you have done all this and experienced the loss of close friends, friends who have given their lives to save you, you have no idea what it is like to be a soldier in combat. Well, very well put. Some of my dead friends. Yes, start reading right there.
The last paragraph?
Yeah.
Okay.
Read it out loud.
Oh, read out loud?
So I can understand.
Alright, late in the afternoon, Bill, Hundley, and I crept up to check the scene of yesterday's battle, in which it was reported that 51 of the 26 division boys were killed. It was shocking to find bodies everywhere we looked in a large radius. Heads, arms, and legs had been ripped away from many of the bodies. In a number of cases, their intestines were strung out 5 or 10 feet from their bodies. It was our first glimpse of the horrors of war, and it shook us deeply. They have been blasted by terrible firepower. It's hard to imagine how a battle could be so intense and violent. One young lieutenant was sprawled face down in front of a small grotto of Blessed Virgin. There was a big hole in his right side, and someone had stuffed rags into it to try to stop the bleeding. I doubt if a medic could have saved any of them. It was a real disaster. Did you write this?
Yeah, I wrote the whole story.
Oh,
I wrote 40 pages there.
you wrote a book?
No, I never turned it into a book. People have asked me to, but I never did. Yeah. Then we get to the Battle of the Bulge. Believe it or not, Mike, I went 28 days without taking my clothes off. Slept in the same clothes for 28 days. No toothbrush, no hot food, just enough water and enough rest to keep you going, and a K ration. The K ration contained 4 cigarettes, a little package of toilet paper, a little chocolate bar about that big, and a little can of some processed food, egg or meat. But that was all we had to eat. That's all we had to eat. Twice a day we'd get a K ration, just enough to keep the body going, but certainly not enough to
satisfy.
Nutritionally, it was not enough.
Right.
Yeah, it was lousy. But I couldn't imagine not taking my clothes off for 28 days. The same underwear, the same socks, the same jacket, the same hat, 28 days straight. We were, you couldn't believe how dirty we were, how unsanitary we were. There's no hygiene at all.
That's very difficult. Difficult situation.
Yes, it was horrible. And up in the Battle of the Bulge, we were surrounded. The first day we got into the Battle of the Bulge was up near Bastogne. We were surrounded very quickly. The Germans, there were so many Germans there. There were a couple 100,000 Germans came racing up there. Yeah. They surrounded us, so we couldn't do anything except put our foxholes in a circle, just like in the Old West, circling the wagons, and hope we could stop them from overpowering us. And so every day we tangled with the Germans, but they were dropping shells on us all the time too. We had about 35 foxholes, 2 men to a foxhole, about 70 of us. And they were dropping shells on us all day long and machine guns, etc. So we lost the men up there. Every day we lost men. In the morning when you opened your eyes, it wasn't a question of, how many, it wasn't a question because it was my time to die, but how many of us are going to be killed today? And up in the Bulge, just laying in the snow all day long, or
How long was that battlefield?
started the 16th day of December, and it took. It ran. The full strength of it ran for about 30 days, and then it tapered off as we started to beat them.
Right.
Trying to think of something that was. Oh, in the first 4 weeks, we had 100,000 casualties. Imagine that, we lost 100,000 men in the first 4 weeks. That's 25,000 men a week. That's
Wow.
Yes.
it's just hard to understand that kind of violence.
It's just easy to say the numbers, but 25,000 men. That's crazy.
A week.
A week.
Yeah. That's over 3,000 men a day would be chewed up by this.
Did anybody get captured alive or get prisonered, or they just killed everybody right off the bat?
No. When the Germans came up through the Ardennes, which was a forest, it was supposedly a very safe area. So new troops coming in to fight were put in the Ardennes foxholes for a week or so just to get them acclimated to the noise of combat.
Mm.
But there was no action down there. And that's why the Germans broke in and came through the Ardennes, because we didn't expect them to come here. The generals, when the generals were notified that there was that action going on here, they thought it was just a patrol bumping into us or something. So they stayed with their bridge game and didn't think about it. The poor bastards out in the foxholes were being murdered. The first morning, there was the 106th Division was in those foxholes that first day. They just come into combat 2 or 3 days earlier, and just didn't think, just very safe to be here in this area. The action's always over here. And that morning, the Germans, a couple 100,000 Germans came pouring through the woods. And these poor kids, they were ASTP students like me. These poor kids, I heard any number of stories about how these kids threw down their rifles and ran screaming into the woods, screaming, "The Germans are coming, the Germans are coming." But the poor kids didn't know what the hell to do. The Germans destroyed the 106th Division that morning. They absolutely destroyed it. No other American division has ever been destroyed like that. They took 8,000 prisoners the first morning of those ASTP kids like me. So that's 8,000 of that week's 25,000. But it was an absolute disaster. And
Wow.
in fact, it's so bad they wrote the 106th Division off the books. It was no longer a functioning division. They just wrote it off the books. And it was so dark during the Battle of the Bulge, you could not, at night you could not see your face, hand in front of your face, because the overcast was so thick and so low no airplanes could fly. We had no air support. It was all dependent on what's going to happen on the ground. And I remember one night, I was in my foxhole one night, about the third or fourth night we'd been there. And around 9:30, 10 o'clock that night, I was alone in my foxhole. I won't tell you why I was alone, but for a while I had to be alone. And about 10 o'clock that night, I could hear crunching in the snow, footsteps in the snow. And I knew it wasn't any of our guys. I knew it had to be Germans. And it got closer and closer and closer. And I thought to myself, well, I'll put my bayonet on the end of my rifle and just have my rifle pointing like this. If one of the Germans falls on it, he'll get stabbed to death. But then I thought, no, then he'll fall in on top of me, and the other guys, his buddies will be there to kill me, so I can't do that. So then I thought, okay, I'll just start firing my rifle at them. That'll light up the landscape each time I fire. But then again, that will tell them where I am again. So I finally thought, I'll do it. I'll take a hand grenade. So I took a hand grenade, and I got one here, boy.
Wow.
This is life.
They're heavy.
Yeah.
So I took a hand grenade and pulled out the pin. So now it's hot. And when I let it go, but it's going to explode in 4.5 seconds. So all I could do, I felt that when you're 19 years old, you're not a genius by any means. I just took my hand, I just laid it on the snow and took my hand off it. And it's going to explode in 4.5 seconds. So I pulled my head back, I came back, ducked down into the foxhole as far as I could go, and it exploded, of course. It killed the Germans. But the blast hit the top of my helmet and knocked me silly for about a day. but I survived.
Okay.
Yeah, that's quite a weapon.
Yeah. It's a nice souvenir you got.
So I'm gonna backtrack a little bit.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about your experiences in Nancy, France?
What?
Nancy, the
Oh,
city.
Mr. Nancy, no. The division had experiences there, but I personally did not. I went around, my regiment went around the south end of Nancy Mess. The other two regiments one of the other two regiments was fighting in Nancy Mess, but we slipped around that and headed to the east.
For the Belgian.
Yeah, the Sarn Valley, yeah.
And then you were a part of the Battle of Hill 360?
Which one?
For Hill 360? The Hill 360?
My hearing's not very good.
The Battle of Hill 360.
Oh, Hill, yeah.
Yeah, can you tell me about that?
That was a very tough battle. The Germans were on top of Hill 360. They had Tiger tanks up on top of Hill 360, and when the enemy is, you don't like the enemy to be above you in battle. It's not good. Mm-hmm. You'd like to have it this way, but here we were crossing a little valley. The town of Obergehlbach was there. We went through Obergehl and started up Hill 360, and it was very heavily mined. Lots of mines, plus the Germans were dug in on Hill 360. So as let's see.
I remember looking through there was a picture of Hill 360.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. In fact, one day in college, I probably had nothing better to do, so I drew a hill. And here's one story here about a kid named Castle, Carl Castle, a good sergeant, one of those guys with his head screwed on correctly. The Germans were up on top of Hill 316. We were dug in on the inner side of Obergilbach. And my foxhole was here. Carl Castle's foxhole was right behind me, 8 or 10 feet behind me.
Okay.
And a Tiger tank up on top of the Hill 360 took a shot at us. And that shell screamed right over my hole, hit Carl Castle, killed him and 2 other guys, killed 3 of them. If that German gunner up there had just been one click down, that would have been right in my foxhole and killed me, without question.
Was that it?
Yeah, his Canopy was one of my classmates in Madison. He got killed at the base of 360. Tommy Langston got killed there. Noble got killed there. A kid named Sweet Olson got killed there and 3 of these guys had a premonition that they were going to die that day, and they expressed that premonition, and they all got killed that day. Yeah, it starts right there.
Okay.
Mike, I want you to read a letter written 113 years ago, because I'm going to give a copy of that to
Ethan?
And it's a great letter for a father to give to his son. When the son graduates from high school or college or just goes on in life. But this guy was a famous actor in Broadway on the stage. Back in those days, that was the only entertainment, was on stages.
Right.
There was no TV, no radio. But so John Fitzgerald was a great actor, and a famous actor on New York State. He wrote that letter to my father 113 years ago. And it's worth sharing. I've given it to a lot of people and they love it. I want you to take that with you. And,
Well, thank you. I want to read it too.
oh, absolutely.
Your father's name was Leonard?
Yep, that was my father.
Right.
So there were seven men that went up to 360 to fight the Germans?
Oh, no, 7.
Oh, well, it says that, 7 from your... All of your squad.
Yeah.
In your squad,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. That's all we had. We had a 5 or 6 already killed and wounded.
So you guys went up along with other people and then...
Just our company.
Oh, you're the K company?
Yeah, K company, man, turned up the hill.
Mm.
I don't know how the hell I ever got to the top of that hill. And somehow I got to the top of the hill and there was a rock pile up there. When the farmers clean up the fields and make them tillable, big rocks would pile up someplace. So this huge rock pile, and it was hollowed out. And so I crawled inside this rock pile. And I was about from here to that wall from the Germans. It was getting dark. And I and another guy in that hole together. And the Americans were throwing, we had that, we were throwing 105s. Okay, this is Hill 360. And here, these are our 105s coming in and crashing right in front of our foxhole. So close. They were landing so close that this other guy in the foxhole was an old timer. The concussion was so heavy that his nose was, he was bleeding out of his nose and his ears both. they had to take them out of there. They had to take them back down the hill, so I was alone in the hill after that. It's so scary, it's tough enough to be with a partner when you're alone, it's even scarier, because your imagination is, you're imagining all kinds of things.
Yeah. So you guys win the battle? Did,
Yeah. As you read a little bit, we went up the hill. Teddy Novakowski, one of my good friends, went out front, firing a machine gun from the hip. That's tough to do. And he was just going, just raking the hill. And he killed a lot of Germans. And Czechoslovakia killed 5 or 6. Wayne Harbaugh killed half a dozen.
You have any idea how many you killed?
It's so hard. It's so hard to say. Like I fired an awful lot of bullets in the war at the Germans. I don't know how many.
How many actually?
How many? I had to hit somebody, but I don't know how many. You don't keep track.
So how long you guys were out there for the?
I was in combat for 154 days, but one day is too many. I'll tell you that. One day was too many. I'm going to end up telling you about the Rhine River battle too, which is a horrible battle.
so is Hill 360 in France?
This is what?
And Hill 360 is in France?
It's right, as you can see from that map, it's right on the border wraps around it.
That you have?
Yeah.
Another. Thank you. This is it today. It's the same hill.
That's just right. You're kidding, old Gussie ran out in front of us and started up the hill. You can have that.
Oh, thank you. So do you have an online copy of your book?
This,
Yeah,
no.
you know.
It got published, it got on the internet on the East Coast for a short time, years ago. Here's a funny story I want to tell you guys.
Okay.
Just after the fighting at Hill 360, we went into a town called Wolfsheim. Wolfsheim was a town where the farmers had built their homes all around the town square. And then they farmed the land around there. And so my squad took a house on the right side of the circle as you enter the town. This house was built on a lot, a sloping lot, so the back basement wall was above the ground. Was above ground level. You can see the back basement wall. Mm-hmm. And some of our guys caught a chicken, and the Germans had raped the countryside, so there were no animals left. This chicken somehow had escaped the Germans, but we caught it. So the boys, we'll have chicken dinner. There was nothing like natural gas. It was all wood stoves up in those days, in those cities. So they plucked the chicken, cleaned it, put it in a pan, put the pan in the stove in the oven with wood around it, and lit the wood on fire. So pretty soon we're going to have chicken dinner. We hadn't had a bite eaten, a warm bite eaten long time. Anyway, so smoke is coming out the chimney. And there's a mesa here that stretches back about a mile, and there's some Tiger tanks on that mesa. And one of the Tiger tanks, seeing this smoke coming out of the chimney, he figured he's going to ruin our dinner party. So he fires at the back of the house. The first 88 ripped out the back basement wall. The second 88 exploded in the basement. The explosion ripped out the kitchen floor and dropped the oven and our chicken dinner into the basement. The third 88, you know what an outhouse is? You know what an outhouse is?
Outhouse?
Outhouse.
Like the...
It's a cracker, but it's outside.
Yeah.
You walk back 100 feet to get to it. Little shanties over a hole in the ground. So this farmer had an in-house outhouse. He had an outhouse in the basement. So the third 88 took out the outhouse. So you can imagine the mess we're in. And the farmers that built the place had put a stairwell going down this way, whereas the explosions were occurring over here. And they'd taken these rocks from the farmland and cemented them into a wall on each side of the stairwell. So there's 6 or 7 of us sat on the stairs. And shrapnel was flying all around the basement, the noise, the smoke, but it didn't hit us because we were protected by these cement walls. But that was a
That ruined your dinner though.
Yeah.
No dinner. No chicken dinner.
Yeah, no chicken dinner. And a lot of good things happen to you and bad things happen to you in war. And hopefully you're on the side where the good things are happening. Well, we're backing over Geelbach and getting ready. After we'd come down off of Hill 360 and drove the Germans off of Hill 360, I was dying of thirst. We had no fresh water. The government couldn't bring us any water. No running water. But there was a horse trough there, so I took a drink out of this horse trough. And then we took off and headed up towards Wolfsheim, where the chicken dinner episode was. So we got up there late in the afternoon, and that night it was my turn to take out a night patrol. And night patrols are very dangerous because you're leading 2 or 3 or 4 men, and you're just heading into the darkness. There's no street lights, of course. There's no house lights. It's just you in the dark, and hope there's some moonlight, but there wasn't. So it was my turn to take out the night patrol. I hated that, but late afternoon, since I drank out of that horse trough, I got violently ill.
You got sick.
Violently ill. And one of my fellow sergeants saw that, and he said, "Jack, you're too sick to go out tonight. I'll take your patrol tonight, you take my patrol tomorrow. And I said, thank you, Johnny, thank you. That's wonderful. So I lay down on the floor someplace, tried to go to sleep, trying to get better. So Johnny, this was about 9 o'clock at night, so Johnny left with 3 or 4 guys, not important how many. Came back in about 45 minutes, they came back carrying Johnny's all shot up.
Oh.
And to this day, I wonder if I had been leading that patrol, would I have been where Johnny was, and would I have gotten all shot up? It's how fate works.
That's hard.
What was his name?
His
name? What was his name?
His name was Johnny DeFlavio. He was a heavyweight boxer, heavyweight boxing champion of the division, I think. But he was a wreck after that. They patched him up and sent him back to us several months later, but he was a nervous wreck. And he ended up shooting himself. And one thing you don't read about in the newspapers reports or my reports, you never read about the number of Americans that shot themselves to get out, to get away from action. You always shoot yourself in the foot. That's, they all take a lot of guts to shoot yourself in the foot. You couldn't do it. I can't do it. I couldn't do it.
Right.
But Johnny did, and there was one nurse's report. One nurse has reported that she had 7 guys come in one day with wounds in the foot.
In the foot.
Well, yeah, they would do anything to get away from combat. It was so terrible. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean the war is not a easy thing. I mean, and most of them are so political and so for nothing that only people die for.
Yeah, and some,
somebody's
there's
advantage.
That's right. There's different kinds of people. Mike, you got guys who will follow orders and go charging up a hill into the face of machine gun fire.
Right.
And then other guys who find ways to avoid it. I know of a case on D-Day at Normandy. I know of a case where one guy was on the invasion. He got ashore. He was so scared that he jumped into a ditch and he pulled 2 dead bodies over him, so no one would find him. And he laid there for a day or 2 before coming out. I mean, there's bravery and there's cowardice. And
yeah, you can find both. Yeah,
yeah.
That's for sure.
I saw a lot of bravery, not much cowardice, but we all hated to be called to go in the next day or 2 days later. I've seen men 25, 35 years old. And after a place like Hill 360, we'd come back down the hill, get relieved. Then a group would relieve us. We'd go back down the hill and get into a barn. Nothing. We didn't go to homes. We'd go into a barn and sit on the floor inside a barn. And I seen guys, 30-year-old guys, sitting on the floor crying like a baby, tears pouring out of their eyes. They're so exhausted.
Yeah.
Mentally, physically, emotionally, they are drained. They just can't go anymore. But they have to. You got to go. Yeah. When the call comes to take off, you go. Chase the Germans. You got to go. You can't quit unless you shoot yourself. Oh. Those guys that shot themselves were court-martialed, given a dishonorable discharge. I don't know if any of them were sent to prison or not, but they lost all veterans' benefits, which is a terrible thing to lose. Yeah. So the Sarn Valley was a tough place to be. Yeah. From there we went to the Bulge.
Yeah, that's my next question about the Battle of Bulge.
Yeah. I told you we were surrounded. Within hours of being there, we were surrounded and couldn't move. We were pinned down in one place for 6 days. And nothing to keep us warm, no good food. In fact, we only had food We only had K ration for the first 3 days. After that, the next 2.5 days,
No
we had
food.
no food.
Yeah.
And the snow was our water. Thank God we had snow. But no food, and again, exhausted, tired, scared. It just it's hard for me now to think back and imagine how I felt at that time, because we felt so terrible, so lousy. Anyway, while we're in this perimeter defense, 35 foxholes, you don't dare get out of your foxhole. You want to go to the bathroom, use your steel helmet. And then the Germans started throwing big mortars at us. And you can hear the mortar being fired. They're only half a mile or 3/4 of a mile away. But we can't get involved with them. So they throw these mortars, you hear the mortar, you hear a ping as the projectile leaves the tube. And we know it's going to take 29 seconds for that projectile to land on us. So we start counting, get up to about 26, 27 seconds. You hunch down inside your foxhole as deep as you can, and just hope if it hits your foxhole, you're dead. And thankfully, it didn't hit any of my,
Didn't hit you.
the foxhole I was in. It killed some of the guys. Some of the guys got killed. They were bound to get
How
killed.
big were these foxholes that you guys did?
What?
How big were they, the foxholes?
Oh.
Just for you to just stand in there?
That wide, about the shape of this desktop. Well, maybe about this wide, and maybe down to about here. Down as deep as you can go. Go down 4 feet,
4 feet.
4.5 feet. But the deeper you go, the better you are. The better off you are.
Yeah.
And but that was our home.
Uh,
But the tough part was not having nothing to keep you warm. And so we just froze night and day. Nothing we could do about that.
So how did you guys win the Battle of the Bulge? Did you?
Beg pardon?
How did you guys win the Battle of the Bulge?
Thankfully, after about 3 or 4 days, the overcast started to lift. And then the Air Force was able to come in and start strafing and dropping, parachuting down ammunition and food. But the important thing, they were strafing the Germans. And the Germans at this point in time, the Bulge was now 15 days old, and the Germans knew they were beat. They knew they could not win. They had been stopped. The Bulge had been stopped, and so many of the Germans wanted to go back home, and they lost their desire to fight, I think.
Yeah.
So we started putting an awful lot of heat on them, killing a lot of them. The Air Force was strafing them. They just knew they had to go back to Germany. So it slowly disintegrated.
Right.
But in here though, here's a letter from George Patton to his troops. I'm surprised you don't know about George Patton.
He was a general?
He was and here's a picture of the German prisoners carrying out our dead and our wounded. I can give you a copy of that if you want.
I mean, I'll accept anything, really.
Okay. Oh, I wish I was better organized in this piece of this, the Bulge. George Patton hated Montgomery. Montgomery was the British general, Bernard Montgomery. And Patton hated him.
Okay.
When the Bulge broke, General Bradley got Patton and Montgomery together and said, okay, fellas, we need some help up there. This is a serious invasion. We need some help up there. And we were down in France at the time. So Montgomery said, well, I can be up there in 4 days. Patton says, I'll be up there in 3 days. Because if Montgomery said, I'll be up there tomorrow, Patton would have said, I'll be up there today. He hated Montgomery. He wouldn't let him get the... So here's a story about that.
Okay.
Patton moves the Third Army 120 miles in 3 days. Eisenhower, you know who Eisenhower was?
Yeah.
Eisenhower said it was not possible. He said it was impossible. But we did it.
How big was the Third Army?
Well, an army is composed of, I don't know exactly, but 3 or 4 divisions.
Wow.
And a division is 18,000 men, at least.
Mm-hmm.
And so an army probably 70 or 80,000 men, I'm guessing.
Wow. In 3 days? In 3 days? Wow.
Okay, then we went to the Siegfried Line.
Right, yeah.
That was the next step.
Mm-hmm.
We never fought against deeply entrenched places like the Siegfried Line. They're cement bunkers in the shape of igloos. The cement walls were 4 feet thick. We could not penetrate the wall with artillery. And they'd been there so long that the Germans had soil on top of them, and they'd grown trees and all kinds of foliage to make it look like part of the countryside. So the first afternoon we came to a point where we could see the domes, the shape of the domes up ahead of in the woods. And so we weren't going to do anything about it until the next day. So we dug in that night. Right here where you know what dragon sheaths are? Those cement barriers that stop the tanks from coming through.
In 13 minutes.
Anyway, we dug in, and I dug in I was the odd man on the end of our group, so I dug in with the guy from the group next to me. I don't even know who they were, what division or what the real part of it was. Real nice guy from New Jersey. And he and I dug in a hole together. And during the night we talked, we light your cigarette lighter so you could see. And we talked, and he was a guy about 25 years old, and he had a wife at home and a little baby. He told me about the little baby and showed me pictures of the little baby. And this tears your heart, I think. The guys with children should not have been on the front line. But the government, I don't know who the a-holes are that assign people, but they should not do that. So anyway, he told me how much he missed his kids, wife and his child, and he had to get home and see. Okay, next morning, around 7:30, we got up out of our apartment. He went back to the group he was with, and I went back to my group. And I moved up just a short distance and laid down behind a tree. And there's a wooded area, but there's an opening in the wooded area from me to the street, the middle of the street. And I laid there, and these guys in this group that I was in, Tolstoy Letter, started advancing. And they advanced up, and they started moving through this open area. And all of a sudden, mines began to explode all around it. It was a minefield.
Wow.
And some of the guys were dropping like flies. And of course, when you're in a minefield, if a mine goes off, you must freeze. You may not, don't move. Some guys go nuts and move. But don't move. As soon as the mine explodes, stand perfectly still. That's your only chance of getting out of there is for you to stand perfectly still and get one of your people to come with a bayonet and start prodding from behind and clearing a path so you can get out of there. But some guys panic and start to run. Well, that sets off more line. Anyway, I'm laying behind this tree, and all of a sudden, through the fog and not the fog, but the smoke and the fog, I see this guy coming toward me, and it was the guy that I was stuck with the night before. And he comes staggering through the woods, and he's all covered with blood. And as he approached me, he did not look at me, and I looked at him, but he did not look at me. He was just staring at the ground. But he went about another 10 feet and fell down and died. Never to go home and see that wife and that maid. It's a sadness of the world.
Do you know his name?
No, I never did write it down. The previous afternoon, before darkness set in, I was laying in my home, and I saw two Germans walking through the woods away from me. They're heading towards the igloos. They were going to go inside one of the igloos. And I could have shot them in the back, but I didn't. I couldn't bring myself to shoot them in the back. That's my principle, so I let them go. In the morning, we had with us what we call tank destroyers. It's a tank chassis with a big 90mm gun on it, mounted on it. Good gun, real good. And so the tank destroyer would spot one of these pillboxes, and he would line up and fire a shot at each pillbox had one opening. Followed a firing port. And this 90mm would go and zip in there, and boom, it was just ready to go. So it wasn't too hard to get these people to surrender in these pillboxes. And so we had a great deal of success that day. Taking prisoners, took a lot of prisoners. We put a lot of pillboxes on ration. We got to the top of the hill. And in fact, I was on top of that hill just 12 weeks ago. On top of that hill, looking down at a little town called Ormond. And Ormond was down in the valley. And the Germans that were driven out of some of the pillboxes had fled down into that town. And you could see them running down into this town. So the captain, we had a hell of a good captain, he said, okay, let's get some corps artillery in here. So he called for corps artillery. Here's what corps artillery is. Back 10 miles are big 240 long rifles. It's like a battleship gun. That's how big they are. And now, by corps, that means 3 or 4 divisions are in an arc. And each one of these divisions has our corps artillery, has artillery attached to it. So, okay, so the 240s fire first. These long rifles, 240 long rifles, so a big shell. Seconds later, 240 howitzers fire, which is they're a little closer to the target. Within seconds later, the 155 long rifles fire. Then the 155 howitzers fire. Then the 105 long rifles fire. Then the 105 howitzers fire. All these in succession, so that all these shells arrive on the target at the same exact second. So we've got 540 shells up in the air now, and I can see them flicker as they fly over. And I look down towards the town, and all of a sudden the town erupts, it explodes. All 540 shells explode at the same minute.
At the same time.
And that town is just boom. We destroyed the town. And the Germans, I wrote in there about here's a story. The United States Army's most costly victory. It was. The biggest battle ever fought in the history of warfare was this one. And it was costly because well over 100,000 men, and of course the cost in dollars. Here's those dragon teeth I told you about. They're cement. They're dug in cement. You can't drive a tank through it. You have to go over them or around them. Yeah. It describes here about a bunch of guys getting wounded and killed, and then it says here, in all this slaughter, none of us had seen a German soldier. They were, and 88 was a terrible weapon, horrible weapon.
At any point while you were there, did you guys see any of the camps, the concentration camps?
Yeah. That Buchenwald, Mike, which was one of the biggest ones. This picture is. Remember I told you about that lady that?
Yeah.
That was taken at Buchenwald.
She was in the camp.
That was inside the camp. Yeah. I am so disorganized. I apologize.
No, don't worry about it.
But I got a picture here of Mike. Here's a picture of the ovens inside. Some of the ovens inside Buchenwald where they shoved the Germans, the Jewish people into those ovens.
Yeah.
And eight ovens in a row. They were busy all day long.
I've seen that in Austria. I went to Vienna and went to one of the camps, and we visited the concentration camp that was in Vienna, and it was horrible. Just seeing all of that was
How anybody could do what they did.
totally
It was a sin against mankind.
So next, here you go. After the Siegfried Line, you guys were crossing the Rhineland.
Oh yeah,
Right.
that was
Can you tell me about that?
that was something else. The castle is right here, right across the river, and right up a hill. Here's the castle right here. The first day I saw the castle was we came across the top of this hill late one afternoon, and it was wooded area, and of course we just flopped down to, because we weren't sure how many Germans were down here, and so we had to be very careful. So we laid up here in the woods for half hour or so, and all of a sudden 2 American P-47s came tearing down the river with 8 machine guns blazing away, both of them. And they would go down, turn around, come back, and blaze away, and eventually ran out of bullets, I suppose. But anyway, we still, the Germans were trying to get across the river. Many of them were. I don't think any of them had the thought of staying here and fighting us. So these P-47 were chewing up a lot of these people. They were out in the middle of the river in boats or in on a piece of wood that would float or anything. So late in the afternoon, we started to move down towards the back edge. The town is not thick. It's only, a couple of blocks thick, as many as the river front properties are. So eventually, late in the afternoon, just as it was getting dark, we got to the very outside buildings. And you don't want to go in and fight in the dark. So we just entered the very outer buildings and settled down for the night. The next morning, we got up and started to advance through the town, and the Germans were all gone. So then we set up a squad of men in every 4th or 5th house, one here, just to keep an eye on the inner side of the river and make sure the Germans don't come back. I was in charge of a house right about here. The castle was down here. So you see, there's the castle. So this is about where the house is that I was in. The castle was downriver about. There's the house I was in right there. I've been back here to visit that house. Nice house. So anyway, we took over the whole town, and the Germans had gone to the other side. So now we found out the next day that we had to be very careful about the snipers. The German snipers were excellent. One of our boys had found a motorcycle, and we had plenty of gasoline, so he got the motorcycle going, and he was on the back street, back here. I don't know exactly where. Mike, he was on the back street, and riding along his motorcycle, and a German firing. Okay, now the river is 250 yards wide. The town is maybe 200 yards wide. So there's 450 yards. Plus the German is not sitting down on the water bank. He's probably inland 100 yards.
Right.
So he's shooting at well over 500 yards, shooting at a moving target. He knocked that kid off the motorcycle. I mean, that's shooting.
That's shooting, yeah.
The next day, one of our lieutenants was running from one building to another here, and anytime you leave a building, you run. You don't walk. You run quickly to get across the street. And so one of our guys was running from one building to another, and the sniper caught him right behind the ear, and the bullet came out below his eye. Again, amazing shot. Now this told us one thing. The rifleman had to be laying on a firing platform. He couldn't be sitting there with binoculars, and was his rifle laying over here, waiting for somebody to come out. By the time he put the binoculars down, picked up the rifle,
You'd be gone.
the guy's long gone. He had to be laying on a firing platform with his face up against the scope and with his finger on the trigger. And he just had to be going like this. And the second he saw something move, boom, he was on top of it. That's the way he caught that lieutenant. And of course, this told us that we better be careful. These guys are good.
Yeah.
So don't stick your fanny out there. Let him shoot it off. About the fourth day, right down here, right across from the castle. Here's the castle up here. Right across from the castle. Two of our guys were down by the river, and a good friend of mine from Texas, a sergeant, he went down there and says, "What the hell are you guys doing down there? There's Germans over there." And a kid named Jim Massey, he said to him, he said, "There's no Germans over there." He was dead before he hit the ground. A machine gun opened up on him, hit him in about 15 places.
Wow.
Before he got the words out of his mouth, he was dead. The other guy was also hit. So my friend dragged the other guy into the building, the range to a building, but the guy died within minutes. But interesting that if my friend was standing right in between these two guys when he went down there, the machine gunner got both of them, but didn't touch my friend. And but we just had to be so careful and stay under cover, which we did. So after that, nobody went outside. The house that we were in, I wrote about it. In the basement, we found 4 cases of liquor, wooden cases, good sized wooden cases. Sloe gin, dry gin, syrup mixes, wine, brandy, just more stuff than we could. We wanted to stay here for a month. Heck with fighting, we'll stay right here. And so every day, guys from the other houses would come down the back door, down the back road with a basket and come to our building and pick up 4 or 5 bottles and take them back to
Take it back.
the guys. It was a very happy street.
Yeah.
That was the fun part of the whole situation.
And about the 5th or 6th day, we got orders that we're going to cross the river tonight. And of course, that changed the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And some guys started to clean their weapons. Some guys started to write letters home. Some guys just got a lot of sleep. Those guys that wrote letters home, I imagine, before those letters got home, they got a telegram from the War Department telling them that their son was killed or their husband was killed. Before his last letter got home, he was dead. Because we lost a lot of guys, awful lot of guys in the water that night. So about,
That's the tough part of this.
trying to think of times. Okay, about 10 o'clock that night, we left that house and walked up, all of us, picked up all our equipment, went up the back street, started walking parallel to the river, back down towards where the castle is. The castle's up here, we ended up down here. When we get down there, we make a right turn and head towards the water's edge. Check in with the captain and with whoever else we were responsible to. And we made a decision, we're going to cross the river at exactly 12 o'clock, midnight, just like in the movies. Each one of these little boats about the size of a pool tabletop, width and length. The boats are about that deep and they're just cheap wooden boats, just thrown together. And eight men would get into each boat, 4 on each side, with put rifles on in the middle of the boat. And just before taking off, the captain came up to me and he said, "Moran, I want a radio in your boat." So he said, you take Frank Nagel. Frank Nagel was a radio man. In those days, the radio weighed about 15 pounds and it was strapped on the guy's back. This little gadget you carry around your pocket did 10 times the work that thing would do. So, that was great. So I put Frank, now, I was number 1 in the boat. Number 2, my assistant was number 2. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I put Frank Nagel in the number 3 spot right behind him. And the guy named Campbell went with the captain, put him in a different boat. 10 minutes later, Frank Nagel was dead. As we got out in the middle of the river, paddling very quietly, trying to be quiet. But 140 men are not quiet. They can't be. So we're slowly moving out into the river, and again, it's about 250 yards across. It's a fairly fast-moving river. All the snow is coming out of the Alps in Italy, heading for the North Sea.
Right.
So we get out in the middle of the river, and all of a sudden the Germans throw a bunch of flares up, and they lay up to the river like Dodger Stadium at 9 o'clock. And they opened up on us with 5 heavy machine guns, spaced along the riverbank. And they're chopping us up pretty bad. And the minute the flares went up, I could immediately, the first thing I heard was, uh-oh, all up and down the river, uh-oh, we're in trouble. Yeah. And when the machine guns opened up, I could hear cursing, I could hear praying, I could hear screaming. It was pandemonium.
What did you do?
Yeah, just
You went down?
Pardon?
You went down in a boat, or there's nothing?
You either ride it out or you jump in the river, one of the two.
Yeah.
And none of us jumped in the river. It was just, I was screaming at my men, paddle. I kept screaming, dig those paddles as hard as you can. And so But now Frank Eagle was dead, Frank fell over on top of me, so we only got 3 men paddling on this side. But fortunately or unfortunately, one of the guys on the other side got hit too, so we still had 3 and 3. So that means we go this way. Some of the boats, the whole side got ripped out, so the boat would go this way. Too much paddling. And so boats were crashing into each other. And there was an engineer standing up in the back of this boat, and his job was to steer the boat, and after we landed and got out of the boat, he was supposed to bring the boat back to pick up more soldiers. But I figured out later, as I was down digging, a burst went over my head and riddled the engineer, and he toppled over into the water. So I was surrounded by shells, put by bullets. Every inch of me was covered except he kept hitting.
Somebody was looking out for you.
Oh, wasn't it though? Yeah. I've said that so often, Mike. The good Lord got me here for a reason. Anyway, we eventually, my boat, along with some of the others, got to the other bank. We pulled up to the shoreline, and we jumped out. We didn't worry about pulling the boat up and back. We just jumped out. And so the guys that were hit in the boats were spinning down the river with the current taking them down the river. I'm sure they were pulling bodies out of the water for the next couple of years.
Right.
I think we lost half of our men that day, about 70 out of 142. I think about 70 were wounded or killed. So we landed on the other side, jumped out of the boats, laid down on the beach. We were exhausted, emotionally, physically, spiritually, psychologically, any you want to name it. We were drained, and so we laid on the beach there for 60 seconds, 120 seconds. Who knows? Nobody was keeping track of time. And after a minute or 2 or 3, we were ordered to get up and get over, but we're going to charge those machine gun nests, which we did. We knocked out 4 of the machine gun nests fairly fast. The 5th one kept firing for a while. We finally got to that one too. And put that one out of business. So then we, it was a railroad town, lots of railroad tracks to be crossed over. From the beach, we came up across these railroad tracks, and the houses were 2-story houses, tall, no big backyard, so we could get right up against the house and avoid the Germans up in the hill in the castle were firing down on us. In fact, they were firing 20-millimeter anti-aircraft guns up from up there, which would normally be used against the planes. They pointed those down the hill, they were firing at us. And they fired a big shell, which explodes on contact. One of our guys got hit by one and blew him apart. But so we huddled up against these houses till dawn, till you could see. And then started fighting from house to house. And the Germans, this way across the river, and we made so much noise. There were 70 of us firing from the hip, firing our M1s from the hip as fast as we pulled the trigger. And I don't know if you know anything about an M1, but you can fire 8 shots, just bang, 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 fast as you pull the trigger. Then you have a pouch right here full of clips. Each clip holds 8 shells. You grab another clip. When this one fired the 8th round, it automatically it stayed open and the clip ejected. So the housing was open. So boom, boom, it's in your back of business. So you can fire, take 3 seconds to put a new clip in, fire 8 more. So you can just like, almost like a machine gun. So one of the Germans we captured the next day, he said, we told him there were just 70 of us. He said, I thought there were 700 of them. We made so much noise. The firing was so intense. And so, I figured we were firing about 3,500 rounds a minute into that town. Just shooting into the dark. We couldn't see anything, but we were shooting in waist high, hoping to keep any Germans pinned down over there, or killing or wounding any of them. The castle was I've got a nice view of the castle there for it. Oh. And here's what the castle looked like. You can have that if you like that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Show that to Mike.
Yeah.
That's the castle you guys captured?
Castle Marburg?
Marksburg. Marksburg. I was the first person in the castle after we drove the Germans out.
The castle still exists, right?
That's the oldest castle on the river, too. Built about 1,000 years ago. You wonder why.
It's pretty.
It's all stone, and the rooms are 10, 12 feet high. How the hell did they ever keep warm in a place like that? In the wintertime, they were cold there in the wintertime.
Yeah.
They had fireplaces in a couple of rooms, but still,
Yeah.
God, it must have been cold. So anyway, the Vale, I was told to take my squad and drive the Germans up the Vale. Now, the Vale is just a wooded area. It was on the other side of the castle, downhill, and it went like this. So I've got my men and we're driving the Germans from house to house. Mortars are landing in the street. The Germans are firing mortars at us. And this one house I was in, and when you enter a house in street to street fighting, you go up the stairs immediately. You don't want to be down in the living room wayside, because when the shells explode, the shrapnel comes through the Venetian blinds at waist height, just about waist high. So you want to be up on the stairwell. So I was in one house, and a shell exploded right out in the front yard, and I heard the worst scream I'd ever heard in my life. That was the first one of our guys being hit, but he just like an animal scream, just terrible. So now when a shell explodes, then immediately that's the time you want to move to the next house. You don't want to wait 3 or 4 or 5 seconds, because another shell is going to be coming in. So I waited. Then when another shell exploded, I raced across the street and got in this house, and had a set up like this. You go up so far to the landing, and there's and I went in there, and I go halfway up the stairwell, up these steps, and I stop. And of course, you got to look around and make sure the house is empty. You don't want to get surprises. So I turned and looked, and this guy that was hit was on the next stairwell just above me, and he was in bad shape. His blood was dripping down the stairs to where I sat. Nothing I could do for him. He was badly wounded, and he died minutes later. But we eventually drove the Germans out of the Vale. Then me and my squad, we turned around, went back around the base of the hill, and joined the fight over here in the city.
And you guys win that fight?
Yeah, and we drove, this was around about hid by the trees. And we drove them up out of the area. And as we got back down here, started to make the turn, my platoon sergeant, Kenny Hill, a shell landed right next to him. And geez, it hit him in about 35 places. He lost his voice, he lost the sight of one eye, he lost fingers on his hand. It's just a mess. But war is hell, isn't it?
Yeah.
War is hell.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
We talked about it. Some of the guys wrote in letters to the division magazine. One guy wrote in, I've been to hell. I've come back from hell. And I hope when I die, I hope God remembers that and takes me to heaven.
Take me to heaven.
Yeah. And it's a shame. I saw so many bodies in the mud of France, in the snow of Belgium, in the forest of Germany. I saw so many bodies of young kids who were robbed of the right to come home and be a loving husband and a good father to some kids. It's just horrible. Just horrible.
It's horrible, definitely.
Well, so I read in kind of like an article, it was talking about how the 347th Regiment, like on May 6, 1945, like had a bunch of Germans surrender, like tens of thousands of that. Were you a part of that?
No, I was not in on that. When the things finally broke and the Germans started running for home, the Russians were coming in on Berlin. They were coming in on Berlin. We were told to stay out of Berlin. So we were down south of Berlin heading for Czechoslovakia. And so we avoided that.
Right.
So we ended up in Czechoslovakia, and the area was loaded with DPs, displaced people, that used to work for Germany in the fields, Hitler's fields, in his mines and in his factories. All these people were free now. They'd been prisoners of his for 5, 6, 7 years. And they had no place to go. They wanted to go home. Their home was probably shattered into a million pieces. Their father and mother were probably killed. But they still wanted to go home. But we could not transport them. All we could do was set them free. So there were thousands of them on the landscape. Just no place to go. We tried to feed them, of course. But it was a sad situation. I don't know where the Red Cross was or some of these other people, but it was horrible. We went to a town called Plauen, Plauen. It's very close to the Czechoslovakian border. It's still in Germany. And we got there, and all these DPs all around us. And we give them chocolate bars and whatever we do. And there was a brewery in Plauen, and went into the brewery. It's a big building, size of a basketball court at least. And it was a doorway with a down run, so a truck could drive into the basement and take out some of the beer.
Right.
And so these DPs, and in the basement, of course, are the huge hog heads, hold 500 gallons each, probably, maybe more, lined up the wall on both sides, these big hogsheads. It's actually a barrel, actually it's a big barrel laying on the side. But anyway, the DPs had broken these open, and all this beer, fermented beer, was flowing out onto the floors. And it was about that deep in this basement. And these people were sucking it up because they had not had any intoxicating beverages for 5 years or more. And these people were getting drunker and drunker and drunker. The next day, it looked like a battle had been fought. There's so many people laying on the grass, passed out. It looked like a battle had been fought there. So we were so hand grenades into the river. There's a river right there. We pull a pig, throw a hand grenade out in the river, and the explosion would kill fish. And then when the fish would float up to the surface, these DPs would wade out there and grab these fish and cook them. So, what else can I tell you?
That's one way of fishing.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's one way to fish it. Can you tell me about the liberation at Buchenwald?
Yeah, I didn't get there on day one. I got there on day two. The Germans, the minute our tanks came pouring over the hills, the guards fled, leaving the prisoners to lay down and vomit. They're so sick. These poor people were so sick. The guy who weighed 180 was now down to 80. Nutritionally, they were drained. So,
Just skin and bones.
yeah. One interesting statement. Eisenhower was so mad at the way the Germans had treated these people, I don't blame him, that he ordered, there's little towns around Buchenwald, he ordered the authorities of all those, in fact, he ordered all the people from these towns to come through Buchenwald and see what they had done.
Yeah.
So they came and went through Buchenwald, and one Burgermeisters were the mayors, I guess. One Burgermeister and his wife came through and saw what had been done. They went back home and hung themselves. The husband and wife, they both hung themselves. They were so disturbed by what they saw. But it was a terrible place. These poor people had no place to go, need medical attention. We just brought in people as fast as we could that could help them live. Some of them were still dying.
Yeah.
Some of them weren't going to live. They were in such bad shape. And their bodies in the pits, the Germans hadn't covered them up. And it was a terrible sight.
So, this whole interview journey of mine, it started last summer, but I didn't start with veterans. The first person I interviewed was a Holocaust survivor, right? And she was in the camps. She was from Hungary, right? And she was in one of the camps east, and they were liberated by the Russian soldiers, right? And she said how the Russian soldiers would just rape like everyone.
They were not good to them.
Yeah, not at all.
Yeah.
And I asked her if she was ever raped, and she said that she had to like go on the top of a bunk bed and like just hide and just like look down, hope no one found her, and she wasn't raped. And I asked her if like she knew if any of the other camps that they underwent the same.
Yeah, in Dachau and.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some of those are just horrible. How any human beings can treat other human beings like this it's an absolute mystery. Although I'm sure Joseph Stalin was not too kind to some people and sent them up to Siberia.
Yeah.
And the Japanese were not very nice. The Japanese killed many of our people.
That's so sad. I mean, after all they went through with Germany and what they've done to them in the camps after they got liberated, and then the Russian came and raped them and abused them and hurt them, probably killed some of them. So that is such a shame.
It's just so sad. It's called man's inhumanity to man, and the history books are full of it. It goes back Genghis Khan
and they fall all of that on religion, but it has nothing to do with religion. It's like
racism.
Racism, doing something to another human. That's so unfair.
And God created all of us. Each one of us has a right to life. How anybody can take that right away from you is horrible. In every army since the beginning of time, there have been murderers. We were not saints. We were not saints. We had murderers in our group. Some of our guys were killers. They would kill an unarmed German soldier. I don't know if they killed an unarmed German civilian, but at the end of the war, we were down near the Czech border. May 9th, the war was ended. So we were allowed to build a big bonfire, which first time we had heat, outdoor heat in ages. So we built a big bonfire, and we're sitting around this bonfire, and we started talking about what are you going to do when you get home. And sadly, in my opinion, 3 of the guys sitting around that fire were killers. They would kill without hesitation. All 3 of them said they were going to go home and get on the police force. What does that tell you?
Yeah.
It tells you the caliber of the mentality of some of the police.
Yeah.
That is sad. But yeah, some of our guys were killers. One guy I know, and we were collecting prisoners fast, German prisoners real fast. So he was given 5 German prisoners and told to take them back. Now to take them back to a stockade, we had temporary stockades built up to take care of house all these prisoners. It had to be at least, a 10-minute walk to get there and 10 minutes for him to go back, 20 minutes. He was back in 5 minutes without the prisoners. He took them in the woods and just mowed them down.
Yeah.
That's just,
This is not right. It's just...
but the good Lord's keeping track. He's going to answer. You're going to answer for your bad deeds.
And after they see, some of them, they go mentally crazy. After they see all the killing and all the dead bodies, they have no feeling. That's I blame that, on the war itself, not so much on the actual person.
And I wrote about that here too, Mike. Oh, here. Just open the book, there it was. Living with death every day was very depressing and stressful. The friends we lost the first few days were hard to take, but either consciously or subconsciously, we seemed to insulate our feelings. Maybe it was a defense mechanism on the subject, and as many others felt in the subsequent months, we rarely saw any emotion or tears, regardless of what our inner feelings were. We just accepted it as a natural byproduct of warfare and kept on going. Yeah. Just get hardened.
Yeah.
And of course, in a combat situation, your adrenaline was right through the chart, off the chart. We were, every animal, we're rational animals, but we're animals. Every animal has a defense mechanism built in. You don't want to die, you want to protect this body. So you do everything you can to protect this body. And in the heat of battle, you make decisions. You don't have time to look at something and say, well, this is that and that's that, so I better do this. You don't get time. Your body, your animal body tells you what to do. Boom. Just so fast. And of course, if it's the wrong thing, you're going to get hurt. If it's the right thing, you're going to get saved. I can't tell you how many times I came close to being killed. I had shrapnel in the wood of my rifle, several places. I had shrapnel in my shoes. I had bullets go through my pants. I was knocked down any number of times by explosions of shells. I was within the explosive field. I bumped into a friend of mine from back home was in our company, in our battalion. And I bumped into him in one town that we were And he and I turned our squads over to our assistant squad leader. He and I went into the building, lay down. And there was in the kitchen of this home, there was a bench and another bench at a 90-degree angle to that bench. So I lay down here and rolled up my jacket and put it for a pillow. He lay down and the other one rolled up his jacket for a pillow. And there were buildings outside us, so we thought we were safe from being hurt. And we were exhausted, so we fell asleep quickly. So I fell asleep, and I don't know, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 minutes, who knows, who cared? All of a sudden, an 88 exploded in the ceiling right above me. I don't know how it snuck between the buildings to get to that point, but it exploded right above me. And all I know is that it didn't knock me off the bench. I didn't fall off the bench and fall on the floor. It threw me off the bench. I went that way, 3 feet above the ground. I went that way. I went that way, 8 or 10 feet, 3 feet above the ground before coming down. Yeah, I was projected. It was like somebody picked me up and thrown me. I couldn't move out. I was inside the explosive field, and it just gave me a ride. But,
The force just
yeah.
pushed you.
A kid named John Lee and I when we went up to Wolfsheim, where that chicken dinner deal went.
Yeah.
The first day we got up there, John and I were in the basement of a house. Again, the house was built on the side of a hill. And John and I were in the basement of this house, looking out the window, watching for the Germans. And 88 went off right outside the window, right in front, practically in front. It knocks us both flat on the ground. You can't help it. Your legs are taken off from underneath. I remember John got up. He was so damn mad. Somewhere he'd gotten a sandwich, and the explosion ruined his sandwich. He was furious. And I think of news stories all the time. Stories come out of stories. And,
it's hard to remember them all at once. You just
yeah, you can't.
Every time you talk about them, something else comes up.
I was amazed that I got this much put down. And I'll give you some stuff to take with you if you want.
I mean, anything that.
Yeah, but I don't with the understanding that you don't put it on the internet and start spreading it.
Yeah.
It's for himself.
You can quote quotation out of here, or even write a little tiny sentence, but just don't give credit to where it came from.
Yeah. No.
Oh, there's so much bullshit in the upper echelon of officers. It's just not fair. The officers' ranks takes advantage of the non-coms. I did a study not too long ago. The officers represent 4% of all the people in the group. 4%. They get 25% of the medals. And you tell me how that. Yeah, that's bullshit. The officers, the captain will go in, or colonel will go out and he'll come up to the front line for 10 minutes just to say he'd been in combat. Turn around and get back, and then he'll get a combat badge because he's in combat. They write up bronze stars and silver stars for the officers. The officers got so many more medals than the men. It's not fair. It's a terrible. It's a disgrace, really. And here's a story. Tupper captures old German castle. Tupper was the name of our regimental commander. And somebody wrote up a story about a battle that occurred at that castle. The battle never occurred. You got a picture? Yeah, you got. The battle never occurred. We calmly walked into the castle and took it over when the Germans came. Here's a story about a battle 20 Germans held out all day long, fought us all day long, and a group of soldiers led by Lieutenant Watt, John Watt. John Watt was one of the most useless people God ever put on this earth. He was horrible. The fight never occurred. It talks about, I gotta show you something. Help us here. I'll get you a copy of something. Anyway, in the dining room of this castle, the dining room, pretty good size. Here's that wall over there. When I got in this castle, this building, in this room, the wall was covered with mannequins dressed in uniforms of old wars and old. I'm going to see if I can find a picture of that.
Yes.
So each one of those mannequins is worth thousands and thousands of dollars. I could have taken a dagger out of the pocket tape. I didn't touch it. Left it there for the German people to have for their ancestry to see. Yeah, some of those dated from. It's amazing how they looked. Yeah. I've been back there a couple of times. They took them out of that dining room and moved them down the hall into a smaller room, which I thought was not good because it looked so neat in that dining room.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway. Anyway, this. All right.
What else you got?
You can have that if you want it.
I mean,
It just be sure you tell them it never happened. Just so much BS. Here's something, you can have this too. This is the start of our getting caught in the bulge and how we, what we did for the next. Talks about that night I just let go of a grenade.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. You can have that.
Thank you.
Oh, here, here's one at that brewery. And I saved the girl from being raped, and here's a story about that. One of our guys was going to rape this girl, had her trapped in a building, and I entered the building. in a town, you've got to clear these buildings as quickly as possible, make sure there's no germs around, or you could have some dead people. So he was chasing this girl through this building from room to room, and I kept following him. And he got so pissed off at him. He was terribly mad at me. He was yelling at me to get out of there, but I wouldn't budge. I was armed and in better shape than him. He was half tight. At the moment, I wasn't worried about anything he could do. After 15 or 20 minutes of my presence, he could see that I wasn't going to leave, so he cursed me out royally and stormed out of the building. The girl was very relieved to see him go. She dried her tears, gave me a smile and thanks, and slipped out the other side of the building.
The girl was German?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Do not know. Yeah, it says here, as mentioned, the Germans had fled the castle, not a single shot was fired in the course of our entering the premises. And contrary to that, in that article that the reporter talks about serious damage being done.
That talks about Tupper.
I
Colonel Tupper. Yeah.
There was no amazing amount of ruin inflicted in the castle. Back to those. Now, one last little funny story. You can have this.
Thank you.
That big fireplace in that dining room, that big fireplace. And the German women did a lot of home cooking and canning in jars, like mason jars, and put it in the basement. So I found a jar of peas down in the basement of the castle. I took it up to the dining room, and had a big urn there. So I dumped the peas in the urn, put it in the fireplace. I came back about 5 minutes later. The urn had melted and the peas were in the fire. It was pewter. Pewter has a very low melting point. Mm. And this beautiful urn had sculptures on it. It was probably a very old urn, probably 500 years old, 1,000 years old. I destroyed it.
Don't worry about it.
Okay, now. Is there something you want for some particular place that I haven't given you? Give a quick check.
I mean, I just have like a few like send-off questions, just like general questions. Mm-hmm. So what were your like post-war like thoughts and like? Do you have any like trauma? Like where do you know where to
No, that's interesting. These guys coming back from the Middle East, they all come back with PTS, post-stress trauma, and they're all getting big benefits because of it. Mm-hmm. And half of them are bullshitters. They are. Half of them are liars. I thought about the war every day since 1945. I wake up at night, I think about the war, but it's not a bad dream. Mm-hmm. I'm just thinking about it. And so for about 50 years, 1945 till 2000, I never went to the VA once for any benefit of any kind. And I see these guys coming from the Middle East all getting this PTS stuff. So a Veterans Administration lady in Denver, Colorado, I don't know her, I have no idea who she was, called me one day and she said, Mr. Moran, we want you to go in and get tested for this, what do we call it? So I went, I thought it was kind of a joke. So I went in and they made an appointment to go see a psychiatrist, which I did. And I went into his office this first day, and I said, Doctor, I'm here, you're supposed to test me for PTSD. I said, first, I don't know what it is, I don't think I have it. And she said, you have it. She was very positive. And before the afternoon was over, she had me crying. She was taking things out of my guts that were there that they're hidden. And but they're wonderful people to be. They take such good care of us.
So how would you say a war changed you? How would you say it changed you? Like,
She changed me?
yeah.
Oh. I don't think, I won't ask how old you are, but I don't think the kids 19 years old today could do what we did at 19. Leading a dozen men in combat, could do what we do physically, emotionally, psychologically. Whether you agree with that or not.
I agree. I agree. I'm with you on that.
Yeah. Because I give talks at high schools and different groups, and I don't see that maturity in these kids. They're great kids, but I don't. But they're not having a good time. I was having a good time before the war came along. The war interrupted one big party. When the war was over, I went back to that party.
Yeah.
But in 1945, I got out of the Army in January 6, 1946. And everything was so lovely and peaceful, and the world was at peace. And I was alive, and the lady I loved was alive. And I just, nothing could be better than that. Nothing could be better than that. We partied for 3 or 4 months, and then got down to business about get a job. I went back to college, got a degree, and
There it is.
I don't know what turns that thing on. I don't understand electronics today, but just wonderful. I married a beautiful lady.
It's flipped.
Oh, that's not her. Come on, you dirty.
How's your wife?
That's my wife, yeah. Gorgeous woman.
And how many children do you have? How many children do you have?
Had 2 and adopted 2.
Oh, wow.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And what a sweetheart. She's sharp, so with it. She was not a housewife. She was a wife, but not a housewife. She was fantastic. But anyway, life was good then. Life was so good in 1946, 47, going back to college. Working summers on the railroad up in northern Wisconsin, making a few bucks. Party on weekends. I mean, just didn't have to worry about the Russians or anything. Just life was good. And then the Korean War broke, and just when I was leaving the discharge center, January 6th, the last table at the bar, as you're going out of the building, is at the table. There's a couple of very decorated soldiers there saying, "Come on, fellas, sign up for the reserves. We'll pay $18 a month. You go to camp for a week in the summertime. Lots of fun." I said, "Bullshit, I don't want anything. I don't any more of you guys. You just leave me alone." Some of the guys in my town signed up for the reserves. They got called into the Korean War, and some of them got killed in Korea. For a lousy $18 a month.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
You've done that already. You didn't want to go over it again.
Yeah.
Well, so my last question is, I've done 2 interviews in the past, and this has been my last question both times. Well, what would be like your one message to the world? Like, it's just one thing you could tell everyone you meet. What would it be?
Oh, well, of course, love your neighbor. There's not enough love in the world. There's not enough. Now that letter I gave you to read.
I'm sorry?
That letter I gave you to read, where is it?
Yeah, I would definitely read it.
Have you read it yet?
No, I went halfway. I didn't.
Read
finish.
the last paragraph out loud, and listen to this.
Breathe right, think noble thought, dream beautiful dreams, be on the square, get in the tune with the infinity, and build a place for you, for your soul.
Build a castle for your soul. Get in tune with the infinite, and build a castle for your soul. But you can't do that if you're not on the square with your neighbor and your friends and your relatives and your relatives. And people you hate. If I asked you, do you hate someone, and you said, yes, I hate so-and-so. Well, how do you expect peace, there to be peace in the world if you hate? You've got to get hate out of our system. You've got to get racial out of our system. That's what everybody. God created the colors, the yellows, the blacks, the greens, the whites. He created all of us. And we're all going back to Him someday. And it's vital that you take you treat your fellow man with respect and love. I just got back from
Germany.
yeah, I just got you saw this from Jim.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
And from Salt Lake City?
Yeah, I just got back to Salt Lake City. These people are so good and so wonderful up there that they put us to shame down here. They are absolutely wonderful. Oh, yeah. This was on your table at the first night. Then I did that talk. That Freedom Ring, American Freedom Festival. Their mission is to celebrate and teach honor and strengthen the traditional American values of God, family, freedom, and country. And we've got to do that. We've got to do that. Here's how do you
It's beautiful. Definitely.
Yeah, read that letter all the way through, because I'm thinking of you as a father. This letter pertains to you as a father,
Right.
telling him how to live his life. What grade are you now?
I'm going to 11th grade.
11th grade?
Yeah.
Okay. See, that letter is addressed to somebody who's graduating. Your dad, I want you to give her a copy of that letter when he graduates from high school. And that letter is a roadmap to success in life. I say that without fear of contradiction. It was written 113 years ago and sent to my father when he graduated from high school. It's a beautiful letter. If you follow that letter, you won't have any trouble in life. But you know, I fear for people like you because your world is changing so rapidly. The electronics, the gadget, the values, the thinking. It's just it's tough. I hope you pray for guidance and pray for protection from those that are there to take me. But I'm glad I'm 98 and not 16. Very young.
Yeah. Well, so you've like done everything. Like, thank you very much for having us here and for giving us all of this to take home. I really appreciate that. I do have something for you, but it barely even repays anything that you've done for me.
Give me anything.
No, I made it for you. It's very small, but hopefully you'll need something. Hopefully you don't already have one of these, but.
Hey, listen, if you have any questions, just call me. I can answer them over the phone.
So I got this online. I did some researching, and I found the entire, well, not the, it's incomplete, but it was the roster for the 87th Division.
Yeah.
And so and it had the codes next to them, the service numbers next to each name. So I had to pick out every single one that said K347, and I made a whole roster.
Oh God, I see that.
Yeah, it might not be complete,
Oh,
but
oh,
it's a roster of Regiment 347 Company K.
Yeah, there's some names I forgot about. Leonard Barker, I knew him well. Lester Bird, I knew him. Roster, nice kid. Burgess. Capasso was wounded on Hill 360. And Ralph's in that picture that I gave you of me. Be in Germany.
On the
No, take
right up here.
picture of me in Germany.
This.
No, the one, that one, yeah, there it is.
Oh, he's right there.
Yeah, that's Ralph Carrillo.
That's him.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, Ralph Carrillo, that was Ralph.
Oh.
That's funny.
Okay. Canopy was killed on Hill 360. Cecil Clem was killed down at the Czech border.
Yeah, I mean this is 229 names.
Yeah. Johnny DeFlavio, he's the guy that shot himself. Oh boy.
And there's 4 pages. So you can keep.
Leroy Edgar, Leroy was my best friend. John Flint, the old top sergeant. Ralph Goki, remember Ralph? Real good, he's in Detroit, I think.
Oh yeah, about that. I want to like keep interviewing World War II veterans.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you like know any around here. Do you know any?
I swear to God, I don't.
No.
Albert Harbaugh died not too long ago. Reese Helton was one of those 2 guys machine gun on the banks of the river. Yeah, Reese got killed that day.
You know how many of these men made it home?
Merlin Hopkins got wounded badly on the river, on the Rhine River.
So you haven't had like any? You haven't had one of these before?
Tommy Langston was killed at the base of Hill 360. Massey with machine gun on the river. Lester Noble was killed on Hill 360. Vernon Olson was killed on 360. Van Polen was killed. We were surrounded in the Bulge. My foxhole was here. The circle of foxholes was here. There was a foxhole right behind me, and that was Van Polen. Van was laying there with a bullet hole between his eyes. And later, every time I looked over that way, I hated myself. Rappaport was killed. Reingold was killed. Rappaport and Reingold were killed together. That was sad. But I'll tell you that story in just a second. Shaw was the guy that got hit behind the ear. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
So yeah, I mean it might not be complete.
Well, some of these guys, were replacements, so they weren't in the initial group.
Oh.
And so some of them I never did get to know very well. Yeah, some of their names, Andrew, remember Andrew well, Kenny Urin, Kenny's a good kid. Harold Letter was my number 2 man. Albert Walter Reingold, yeah, he was a pain in the ass. Eddie Wesselman, I talked to Eddie. Eddie died recently, but I talked to him. He became a farmer, a wheat farmer up in Washington. I talked to Eddie about a year ago. The night we crossed the Rhine River, Eddie had a scar, blood dripping down his cheek where one of the machine gun bullets had just grazed him.
That's just great. You have good memory of all of them.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll tell you a story about Reingold and Rappaport.
No, that's for you. That's for you.
Oh, thank you,
yeah.
thank you. Reingold and Rappaport. There was only 2 Jewish boys in our platoon. At that time, there wasn't racism, but there was, you're either in the group, the social group, or you're not. And they were not in the social group of the platoon.
Right.
Out of 33 guys, Reingold and Rappaport were here, the other 31 were here. So they stuck together like Siamese twins. One, you could not see one without the other being within 3 feet of them. So the day they got killed, we were advancing towards Obergehlbach. We're still had a mile or so to go. And 88s were picking us off. And an 88 exploded right next to Reingold and Rappaport. A big piece of shrapnel broke Reingold's spine, broke his spine. He died. Rappaport got hit in the groin, real deep in the groin. And you couldn't put a tourniquet on it. The blood was pouring out. Couldn't stop it. As he was dying, he said, "I wish my brother was here to help me. My brother was a doctor. His brother was a doctor in Chicago." Now, instructions and orders were stay 10 feet apart, 20 feet apart. Not these 2. They stayed, they were right there like that. That one shell got them both. But if they had listened, they'd have been separated by 10 or 15 yards, and at least one of them would have survived.
Would have been alive.
But that was unfortunate. But it was their own fault in a way. Yep. Anyhow.
So many stories.
Yeah.
Very good.
Now I want you to read that letter, and I want you to give him a copy of that letter when he graduates from high school.
You got it, sir. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
I'll hold you to that.
I'll remember that.
Okay. You look like a good young man. I think you're going to do fine, but keep your nose clean.
Yeah.
Stay away from drugs.
Oh,
If Mike ever calls me and tells me you got into drugs, I'd come and find you with a baseball bat on hammers.
No, he's a good kid. He doesn't do stuff like that.
Yeah.
He doesn't even drink soda.
I don't like.
Oh, good, but
He's a water boy.
yeah.
I don't
Just
like
water?
soda. I don't like
But
soda.
you know, you do what old Dad says here.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I had a wonderful father. My father was a great man. That letter kind of hints that to you, that he was a great man. And I am what I am because of him. He was just so good for me. He led me, steered me when I was heading for trouble. I was no saint when I was young, but survived it. I don't think
No, you've done something right that
you probably
you've
weren't
got-
any saint when you were young either. Yeah. But anyway, I think you're on the right track, and you keep doing the right things.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
And my
I
pleasure.
appreciate it.
My pleasure.